got a kick out of, she made some comment about her new city's team beating the Rangers in the hockey game or something like that. What do they do wrong?
I know. Take off. Displayed, right?
Yep.
Oh. Unless, did you put it on the?
I'm gonna switch it right now, but I didn't know if you were screwing up the next screen or not.
The calendar was on our study.
It was, but that's why they said tonight they had to pull it off.
Got a full
Mike,
house.
you're gonna run it? Virgil's Apple TV.
Theirs. So I put another district close to us. And why we are
He
slow.
was a good guy. Torture him too much, dude.
Only when I'm mad at him. Not usually very often.
All right, thank you, everybody, for being patient with us. Wanted to let everybody know that we called our meeting to order at 4:41, did the Pledge of Allegiance, or sorry, 5:41. We weren't here at 4:41. 5:41, we did the Pledge of Allegiance, roll call. We adjourned into executive session for matters relating to student matter covered by FERPA, matters leading to the appointment of a particular individual, and negotiations at 5:42. We adjourned from executive session at 6:41. We did take action. So that leads us to our next order of business. With the approval of the agenda, any comments on the agenda? We'll be voting on this next week. Okay, minutes for the previous meeting. Any comments? We'll be voting on the minutes next week as well. Okay, communications, we did have a letter from Mr. Lowry about his visit with our Board of Ed in March, and the Erie One BOCES annual meeting notice for their election of their two board members. Does anyone else have any other communications?
I just wanted to acknowledge that, like probably a bunch of other board members, we got a lot of communication this week just with questions regarding some of the budget items and staffing items that we're going to be talking about tonight. So I just wanted to acknowledge that we did get a lot of that communication. I think we all pretty much have lists of questions that we'll ask as information gets presented so that we can answer those for the community.
Thank you. Any other communications?
I only got two. Did we get more than that?
I got like a,
Oh,
Okay, unfinished business, we have none, which leads us to our superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. Monty. I think we're going to start tonight with a budget update. Loud.
Evening, everybody. This is budget study session number 3. We've previously looked at the budget study in March, and then our initial budget study session in February. So this is our third time in advance of hopefully a Board of Education ratification next week for the budget. So it's always good to kind of take a look at our timeline from a budgetary perspective. We do this every time, but I think it's worthwhile to revisit it. The district has filed its final tax calculation to New York State. We did that in time for the March 1st deadline, and we'll talk a little bit about that as we get into the presentation tonight. For those that are interested in running for the school board, the folks must have their nominating petition into district office on Monday evening by 5 p.m. We have one board seat that's open. The term of Mr. Belanti expires on June 30th, 2026. So folks that are interested need to pick up a packet, have the appropriate number of signatures done in order to be placed on the ballot in May. The last day by the New York State's regulations for the board to adopt the budget is April 24th. We'll adopt ours on Tuesday, April 21st, so we'll be in good shape there. We do need to supply our final property tax report card to the state comptroller's office by April 27th, which will be fine once the budget is passed next week. We are required to do a public hearing on the proposed budget. Our public hearing coincides with our annual Meet the Candidates Night, which is on Tuesday, May the 5th here in this room. So we will present the budget one last time in three-part format so folks can see that in advance of the vote on Tuesday, May 19th. The vote does take place here in Virgil's from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. On Tuesday, May the 19th. For our own budgetary processes here at Sweet Home, we are now down to budget session number 3. It looks a little differently than when we presented it back in February, but we will present kind of an updated budget that will be a balanced budget based upon a number of things, a staffing plan that Dr. Genestri will present here shortly, and then just kind of an overall snapshot as to where we are in terms of the New York State budget. For those that don't know, the state budget is due to be ratified by April 1st every year. They still have not passed this New York State budget. So we still do not have a clear picture from New York State as to where we are in terms of overall foundation aid and expense-driven aids as of yet. So we are building a budget essentially blind from that end of things. And then for us, again, as I mentioned, we will adopt the budget. The board will vote to adopt the budget next Tuesday, April 21st. And again, the annual district budget vote and school board election takes place on May the 19th. Thank you, Dr. Genestri. So from a big picture perspective, this is kind of where we are with the budget. Since we've last met, I wanted to give an update both on the revenue and the expense side. We have the executive governor's proposal in January presented us with a 1.5% increase in foundation aid. In circles that Dr. Genestri, with the superintendents, as well as the local business officials, we believe that the percentage increase in foundation aid, although again, the budget has not been passed at the state level, will be in the neighborhood of 2%. So we did take a 2% increase in foundation aid to realize a balanced budget this time around. An increase for us from 1.5% to 2% is $120,000. So that difference, that 0.5% difference in basic foundation aid for the district is $120,000. Since we've last met, we've got updated information on our utility costs from our utility cooperative here in Erie County that we would expect to see beyond what we had budgeted for in March, an increase of about $265,000 in utilities, gas and electric. And then the district is part of the New York 44 Trust. We did get our final numbers after our March meeting here with the board that resulted in an additional $650,000 increase in healthcare costs to the district. That translates to, depending upon what plan folks are on, anywhere from an 11.5% to 13% increase in premium costs from this present year. That represents in total about a $1.2 million increase in total healthcare contributions by the district from the present year, 25-26, to next year, 26-27. So all that added together, it did represent for us on a program maintenance budget, a rollover budget, a budget deficit of $2,097,822. So we'll go through kind of how the steps that we've done from a programmatic, or not necessarily programmatic side, an operational side, to get that number down a little further. And then Dr. Genestri will certainly talk about the staffing piece of it. Just for the edification of the board, that last chart on there, the New York State annual budget process, this was shared with us at our Erie One BOCES business official meeting. That represents the last 5 years of the actual budget enactment by New York State. Again, April 1st is the day. You see each of the last 5 years, it's been beyond that April 1st day, often extending well beyond our mandated budget adoption date, particularly, honestly, the last 3 years, that budget has passed beyond the time that you as a board have enacted to pass our own school budget. So in the budgetary process, the work that we have done to this point, we've determined where the board wants to be at the tax cap. And with our bus purchases, we are going to go right to the tax cap, which for us is 3.3%. We'll talk a little bit about that kind of going forward. We did talk at length in previous budgetary meetings about the use of reserves, and my recommendation to the board is to minimize our use of reserves because of how the budget has performed the last couple of years relative to out-of-district special education tuitions that have not been budgeted for, contracted transportation that has not been budgeted for as it relates to potentially McKinney-Vento kids and out-of-district placements. And then thirdly, the utilities increases. I just think it's not prudent for us to look at using reserves as a budgetary gap closure method to the rate that we've used it in the past. We will use some, and you'll see that in our revenue projection, but not to the extent that we've used it in the past. We did finalize our BOCES participation numbers and did realize some savings there, and we'll talk about that. And we did spend an inordinate amount of time going through the budget line by line. I'll just talk louder, line by line, to realize any operational expenses to save and close the gap on the budget. Tonight, we'll talk about the retirements and the impact on the overall staffing as it relates to the budget. And then we'll talk a little bit more about state aid, sales tax revenue, and interest income that we've added to the revenue side of the budget to help us close our gaps based upon some of the projections that we've received since we last met. And then we've already talked about the New York 44 Trust. So again, from the revenue side of the budget, I just want to make note of it in those far two right-hand columns. The numbers that are in red are numbers that we've changed since we've last met. The $27,320,000 represents a 2% increase year over year in foundation aid. And our budgeted total increase in foundation aid is $533,000. And again, we're taking a 2% estimate on foundation aid increase, although the governor's executive proposal only afforded us 1.5%. And then we did receive some good news on our expense-driven aids relative to special education, high excess cost aids, both public and private excess cost aids, and transportation, that based upon projections against what was proposed in January in the governor's proposal, we would see an increase in those aid streams to the tune of a total of $7,019,000, which is an increase of $469,000 in total aid at that expense-driven level. So on the bottom, you see a year-to-year total increase in aid, and then a year-to-year increase in total foundation aid. It also incorporates, although you won't see it on the revenue side, the executive budget proposal includes an additional $690,000 in UPK aid. So you won't see it on the revenue side because it does flow through a special fund, but that money has been absolutely used to close any potential budgetary gaps. So our year-to-year increase in total aid with UPK and the UPK additional funding is $1.8 million. If you look at kind of that middle column on the total on the bottom from last year, our total increase in aid was $4.292 million, whereas now we're at $1.8 million. So we are seeing a significant decrease in total overall aid to the tune of about $2.4 million. Our tax cap is what we submitted to New York State prior to March 1st. Our tax cap is 3.3%. That includes bus purchases to the levels you see there along the left-hand side. A majority of our tax cap does include these bus purchases, 4 large electric bus purchases at $164,000 each. It's important to note that the sticker price on those buses are just about $465,000. The district has received and been awarded grant money from NYSERDA, as well as at the national level through the EPA to bring those electric bus purchases under what we would otherwise pay for a similar sized diesel bus. So you'll see the 4 large electric passenger buses at $164,000, the 3 large passenger diesel buses is at $183,000, 2 small wheelchair buses at $161,000, and 1 small passenger diesel bus at $133,000. All of that is factored into the tax cap to bring us to a tax cap of 3.3%, or an increase year over year of $1.796 million. Another area of revenue that we've taken a closer look at since we last met, we've received our Q3 payment from Erie County on sales tax. And you'll see in the right-hand column there that we have received $1.595 million in a sales tax payment from Erie County. And then on the bottom, you'll see that through 3 quarters, to compare really apples to apples, 3 quarters in the current budgetary year was $4,184,705 versus last year we were about $3.9 million. So we're trending a little higher, about $200,000 higher than where we were. So we've bumped up our projection for sales tax to help offset some of the costs on the expense side. We had originally had our sales tax projection to be around $5.7 million. We've added $100,000 to it to make it 5.8. So in totality, the revenue side of the budget, we are at presently $108,608,147, which is an increase of about $3.03 million and a year-to-year increase of 2.87%. That budget is at the tax cap, which means that on May 19th, we only need a simple majority for it to pass. One more yes vote than no vote. And then on the expense side, it is important to have a conversation to kind of frame this up a little bit for you. Those lines there that you see have really happened since We initially met in February through processes of going through the budget line by line, through conversations with building admin, our administrative cabinet team, our central office team, the board in general. So these are savings and expenses that we've realized since we initially met in February. I'll just remind the board that when we met in February, we did talk about two other cost-saving measures, and that was the addition of two exceptional classrooms at the elementary level, where we feel as though that would realize a savings for us of about $450,000 in special education tuition. We took that savings in the February meeting, so it won't be represented here, but we've already taken that savings. And then the second piece of it is we've had some conversations about bringing our OT/PT folks that are currently outsourced and contracted with other agencies in-house and realizing a savings there of about $277,000. So those are savings that we have already taken. These other items that we've talked about since our initial February meeting are savings that really total about $1.4 million. I'll just talk a little bit about each of them. We've talked about a $60,000 savings through the Office of Instruction on some contractual lines and materials and supply lines. We've looked at savings through our BOCES participation. We've saved, estimate that we would save by eliminating some of those lines, $240,000. We've looked at some vendor contractual lines to save in the actual budget, $115,000. We would look to, we have in the business office, we have one person that is going out on maternity leave, and we've opted to, she intends not to come back. We've opted not to replace that position and to operate the business office with the staff that we presently have at a cost savings of about $40,000. We've talked about and taken $14,000 from the Board of Education travel line. And that the reason there is that in each of the next 2 years, I know many of you attend the New York State School Boards Convention. That convention is here locally. So we felt as though that was a prudent savings measure. We talked about, and I've taken $25,000 from buildings and ground supplies. We've talked about and taken savings from central printing and postage in terms of the way that we deliver calendars home, as well as looking at some postage savings of about $25,000. We've looked at and taken from the BOCES line, this is another BOCES line, training days to the tune of about $22,000. We've trimmed back some technology hardware purchases of $35,000. We've eliminated the plan to add charging stations for our electric buses off the gym at the high school. We had $100,000 set aside for that, so we've eliminated that. And then we've, and Dr. Dinestra will talk a little bit about this in his staffing plan, but we have looked and changed, I recommended a change to summer school savings of about $300,000. And then that last line is the additional excess cost aid that's coming in relative to special education to the tune of $460,000 for a total savings on the expense side of the budget of $1.436 million.
Don, question?
Yes.
How will we charge the buses if we don't have charging stations? And
We
aren't
presently,
getting more?
so that's an excellent question. So we have 3 charging stations right now. We have presently on site, we have 7 buses. So we rotate them in and out of the charging stations. We did look at, like I said, the plan was to put them off the gym because the service center does not have capacity to add any more charging stations in our estimate. And the cost was too prohibitive from that end to do kind of off the back of the high school. So we're looking at bringing it inside the actual transportation lot with a new service upgrade that's coming as part of the capital project to incorporating some of those costs in the capital project. We do have some, in meeting with National Grid, we brought National Grid in. National Grid has told us that we can add one more charging station to the current equipment that is at the service center. So that's our plan, to add one more charging station to help with that. And then we would look to some sort of maybe a portable, kind of a temporary stopgap charging station to get us to next summer when the capital project work officially begins. Yes.
Quick question. I know you mentioned that we're taking a 2% on the assumption that that's what goes through the budget. I know it was 1.5. I know the one House bills from the Senate and the Assembly both said 2 as opposed to the governor's. I don't know where we're going to go yet, but didn't last year, the number that we were given, we proposed the budget end up being lower than we ended up
That was
getting?
2 years ago, but yeah, we lost, in the executive proposal, we lost about $600,000 in aid. Dr. Justin, if you want to speak to it, but I feel pretty good about, we've had conversations with our local legislators from that end. And the word that we're getting both in the business office circles from ASBO and I don't want to speak for the superintendent circles, but they feel fairly confident that, that 2% is going to come one way or another.
I would say the same. And, I think the things that are holding up the New York State budget right now are not related to education, which is also making us hopeful that that 2% that they said minimum, but I do expect it to be 2%. And if it's above that, it's not going to be very much. So.
And again, just as a reminder, that 0.5% is $120,000 for the district. So it's something, it's not nothing, but it's a far cry from the $600,000 or $700,000 that we lost in the past.
And just to comment into it, I got an email today, which I've already shared with the board and the admin from our New York State School Boards Association advocacy group in Albany. And they did pass a short-term extender that gets them through Thursday, which basically means payday for the state employees.
Correct.
And neither of the groups is in town right now. The Senate's supposed to get back tomorrow, the Assembly on Thursday. So I'm not holding out any hope that we will have a completed budget before we have to vote, unfortunately.
Yeah, I
Did
would
mention the same thing.
Yeah, I wouldn't count on it. I'm hearing May.
Okay. And they did say school funding and education policy have been low while they're fighting about a bunch of other things.
Yeah, I think that the governor's initiative surrounding green energy is at the forefront, not only electric buses, but the mandate that she's enforced relative to new construction and utilizing green energy as opposed to other forms of energy. I think that's really what I'm hearing is a big sticking point.
Yeah, they mentioned a handful of other things too that are all policy issues, which I have an opinion about, but I'll leave it there.
Yeah. So any other questions regarding kind of the operational side and some of the cost saving measures that we've taken? If there are none, I will turn it over to Dr. Nestri for his staffing update. Go ahead, Brian. Sure. Sure.
Some of these are just big picture questions so I want to understand, and I think also just for the public. So our revenue's up $3 million and we had a gap of 2 million. So that would lead me to believe that basically our expenses are about $5 million higher than what they were last year. Because I think in general, that's one of the questions I've gotten from, just a public question is like, well, if our revenue's up, how come do we have this gap? Well, there's because of the expense side.
Sure. I will just say, just to kind of generalize it, there's really, for me, aside from salaries, because salaries are contractual, but aside from salaries, health insurance, $1.2 million. Special education out-of-district tuitions, $1.4 million. Contracted transportation, $500,000. And utilities, almost the same, about $430,000 in increases. So right there, you're looking at over $3 million on just 4 categories from that end of things. So To answer your question, yes, our expenses are about $5 million higher than they were last year.
Right, okay, yeah, so that's, but I think that's important, right? That everybody understands that there's these expenses that, are there. That, in many ways, there's nothing that can, like electricity, I noticed that's up like for almost $400,000. And I was curious, like, what, is that just the cost or is it because of the electric buses? I mean.
Not so much about the electric buses, it's just about overall usage. It was something that, it honestly hit us this year. That was a bit of a surprise. We didn't see it coming, much like my bill at home. I didn't see that coming to that extent. And it's overall usage. Certainly, the electric buses contribute to that some, but it's district-wide.
And then I did notice on the, just as the business, if we look at the admin side of things, looks like costs are down 3.3% in terms of salaries. On the teaching side of things, costs are down 1.4%. Those are just percentage because we're dealing in different size numbers because one of the questions is, are costs being cut on both, if there are cost savings on the teaching and are there also on the admin side? Admin's down 3.4, when I say staff is down, because it could be buildings, grounds, and that is down 1.3 when I looked at the numbers, or 1.4. So both have come down a few percent. The one other question I had is the BOCES. Notice there's a lot of increases in those just in general for BOCES. Is that just, I mean, I know we're out, there's actually some cost savings by using BOCES, but are there other things there that we need to be aware of?
In terms of benefits?
No, well, I just mean in terms of the cost that, look like when I look at the actual amount change column in the draft expense budget, I noticed there's a number of line items for BOCES that show an increase. And obviously we're.
Probably contractual.
Yeah, that's what I just wanted to make.
I don't think there's a line in BOCES that doesn't go up year after year. BOCES is a bit of a double-edged sword because we do get aid back on what we spend. So, but we did, I believe, reduce our overall BOCES. When we looked at line by line, we reduced our overall BOCES, some line items. So our aid might be impacted next year when we go back to retrieve that.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the operational side? Okay, Dr. Genestri, I'll share.
Sure. And just kind of reiterate, we did start with an over $2 million budget deficit this year. After Don ran the first initial numbers back in February, that deficit was at 1 million. And then we've got additional healthcare and utility costs that ballooned it to 2 million. And so when those costs came in and they came in late, we went to work, and I just want to thank the building principals and our supervisors and directors who sat down with us to go over a lot of these lines, but also talk about staffing and where we're going to be with staffing in order to close a budget deficit. It's never easy to do that work. It's a lot of hard conversations, but productive. There were two goals in mind when we had those conversations. Number one, to have as little impact on programming as possible. And number two, to make sure that anybody that wants a job at Sweet Home that's currently working at Sweet Home has a job here next year. And I'm happy to say that that will be the case, and that we will not be laying off people. But we do make some shifts that we'll discuss tonight. I think the 1.5% increase in foundation aid, more than half of the districts in New York only got a 1% in their initial state run. And there's been advocacy, I know, from superintendents, and I know from other groups around the state, that's a an impractical model, an impractical reality right now. As Don stated before, our increases in everything from healthcare to utilities will not cover the 1.5% increase in foundation aid. And we wanted to have, like I said, our two goals: minimal impact on programming while ensuring that anybody who has a position this year and wants to come back next year keeps their job. So after the initial run, and then you add the healthcare and utility costs, it ballooned our gap up to $2,097,822. And through the work of our admin team, we got that gap down to $661,822. And you saw the savings in the previous slide to get that gap to $661,000. We thought that was the point where basically if we reduced any more on the programming side, it would have more of an adverse effect on the programming and on our students. So closing the gap, just a couple of considerations. Like I said before, we will close it without layoffs of any faculty or staff. Every person that wants to come back in 26, 27 has a position here at Sweet Home. To close the remaining gap, a limited number of grades were consolidated or recommended to be consolidated due to lower class sizes. And I know that scares some people when they hear that because it obviously is going to raise some class sizes. But we worked really hard to make sure that the class sizes that we did increase still fell in line with what's happening in other buildings around the district or in other sections around the district. So our ability-based administrators, we reviewed every grade level, every course to determine where we could consolidate based on lower class sizes. That was the determining factor for these recommendations. We now believe through limited consolidation that class sizes are at targeted levels throughout the district. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. There are a couple sections at Maple Mere and Willow Ridge and Heritage that we're looking at. And if things change over the summer in registration, I'm going to say this a lot tonight. If things change over the summer in registration, we're going to have to either do two things. We're going to have to dip into reserves to fund those positions, or really control our spending next year and use any kind of surplus to fund those positions as well. So we're going to keep an eye on that. That was agreed upon with the building-based administrators. You know, we want to keep that promise.
Can
We
I
have
ask
some-
a question
yes.
before you continue?
Yes.
So what is the cutoff, right? So I know that we know that
Yep.
Central Reg is busy until sometimes after school has already started with kids coming in the district and leaving the district. And that isn't something that slows down even now. You're still getting brand new kids that are walking in the door. So the fluctuations are very real.
Yes.
And they happen just throughout the course of a school year.
Yes.
What is the cutoff? So I
a
hear you
date.
say a lot that you're going to keep an eye on things. And I think it's really important that people understand exactly what that means.
Yes.
When does the alarm bell ring when it hits a certain number?
Yep.
Is there a communication plan with the building administrator so that they feel supported should the need arise to dip into reserves and get another person, or what does that look like?
Yep. So we'll monitor it throughout the summer. And I think, you know, in August, it's not the ideal time to hire, but if we have to, we'll do that. That's when central registration is at its busiest. And so, you know, I don't want to, August 15th is too late, but sometime between August 1st and August 15th, I think we have to make a determination and really put our projections into the Excel chart and see where we are. The district has made a concerted effort to keep UPK is 18 mandated class size. So UPK 1, 2, 18 to 20, and 3 on up, 22 to 23. There are some sections that are above that number. It's not a hard line. I'm going to say that right now. And those sections we're going to really keep an eye on this summer. But we know that the district does have a transient population, and we know we see a lot of movement over the summer in and out. So we just kind of took the stance not to staff a position on a projection that it could go higher at this point, knowing that we want to see some hard numbers based on where we are budget-wise. It's not ideal, I'll admit that, but in the budget situation that we're in now, we feel that that's the best way to operate. Did I answer? So our fear, we also, you know, talked to our building level administrators about the future. And it's hard to predict what's going to happen in the future. But we know the economy is in flux. It's up and down right now. Promised cuts to Medicare, Medicaid. We don't know where those, cuts are going to be coming. We have a feeling that it could be next year. Whereas the governor talked about getting that revenue from to cover Medicaid and Medicare, it's from education, which is a big fear of ours as well. But right now, our federal money is in place, thank goodness, and we're not realizing that for 26, 27, but we are watching that closely for future years. We have January 15th was the deadline for faculty members to submit a letter of resignation for the purpose of retirement. We will have a celebration of their careers here at Sweet Home, lots of years. We had 12 faculty members submit a letter of resignation for the purpose of retirement. And we'll talk about that in a little bit more. And then we present this to the board before any seniority-based teacher transfers have been completed. We got to get the budget passed. And so more specifics about what movement is going to happen. There's a lot of transfers that need to take place, and there's a lot of dominoes that fall after that.
I could just want to clarify, there's 13 faculty letters of resignation?
There are 12. It is 12. It's in 12 in total. There are 11 before the deadline and one came after the deadline. So my apologies on that.
In terms of the total head count, I mean, it looks like over the last few years, we've had in total, I mean, there's a lot of increase in head count.
There is.
So these adjustments, I mean,
We've done a lot of shifts where we've been able to fund some positions through grants, which has been extremely helpful. So I'll take UPK, for example. When I got here, the district did not have full-day UPK housed in Sweet Home. And so we've been able to use that grant to fund those positions. So, and I'll go back a little bit, hate to use the word COVID, but at COVID, the district did add 54 positions. And, it would have been tough to keep all those positions, but our enrollment increased and a lot of our needs changed in the social emotional realm, especially. So we're able to add social workers and more mental health faculty members, which has been wonderful for the district. So we've made some shifts when the district brought those positions on. We made some shifts in titles and been able to keep those positions in the district, which has been super helpful. So so the N number is actually higher, and some of it is based on the grants that we've received and some of the needs that we've had. We added a few positions for our L students. Special ed has grown here in the district, and we've made some shifts there as well. And so normally, if it wasn't COVID, you add positions as need arises, but those positions were added and we were able to keep everybody through those 54 hires. So where we are with enrollment right now, just kind of where we were in 2019, we had 3,200 students total here at Sweet Home. We're up to about 3,771 now. So a difference of about 500 students, a little over 500. This chart also indicates the changing kind of nature of our student body, more L's in the district and more students with IEPs in the district. We know that just this summer, it's well documented. We had 27, Mr. Feldman, come in this summer that we did not have budgeted for completely. We did have a contingency budget, but it blew through that contingency budget pretty quickly, and those students had to be placed out of district. So that was a concern and something that we used, reserves for, and we're trying to avoid that moving forward.
Can I just say one quick thing before you move forward? Because this was something that I did receive some communication on. I think it's important that our community understands that when we're talking about the increase in special education students, we are not looking at this like it is a problem to be solved, okay? I'm the mom of a special needs kid, and it would just tear me apart if I felt like our district was looking at our students as if they were a problem that needed to be solved. That is not the case. When we're talking about special education needs and the cost incurred for these students, it is so that we can care for them, so that we can provide the services that they need, so that our teachers feel safe in the environment that they are educating those kids in. It's a positive spin. So when you hear us talk about this, for anybody who's listening or anyone who has given feedback about this, please don't look at this like it's in a negative light. Okay, these conversations are important and they're taking place so that we can care for our kids, not because we are looking at them as if they are a problem.
I couldn't agree more. In fact, it's a point of pride for our district. Our special programs department is absolutely outstanding. I think it's a destination district for many families that are looking for a better place or a better setting for their child. And I couldn't agree more. It is an absolute point of pride. We are adding 2 exceptional classrooms to the district in the kindergarten 1 range. And it's a win-win in many circumstances because we get to keep our kids here in district. And there is a financial savings with that as well because tuitions are so high, but we know the level of care that they'll receive, and it's worth it to build those additional classrooms here at Sweet Home. So we're excited about that, and we are looking to staff that with our teachers, aides, as well as additional service supports in speech and psych services for those rooms. So 12 retirements, like I said before, we went line by line. The next area that we look at is attrition to keep our goal of not laying off a person here to close that $622,000 gap. Any decision to consolidate or absorb a position this year were made strictly by looking at class sizes. And we're going to monitor our enrollment numbers between now and throughout the summer, especially at the elementary level. If we start to exceed K through 12 at 20 and 3 through 5 at 24, it'd be our recommendation to the board and to add a faculty member to keep that class size lower. At that point, we would have to use reserve funds for these positions or place a higher level of control on spending in order to create surplus to pay for those positions. So we're fully aware where our numbers are. And we think, some of the moves that we've made fall in our norms, which is good and also closes that gap. I wouldn't be here there's extreme concern about next year's fiscal output. I'm just going to put it out there now. This is something that, and I know Mr. Feldman and I talk about probably 10 times a day of the rhetoric that you hear out of Albany and Washington. My colleagues at Erie One are sounding the alarm on next year as well. If there are cuts to Medicare, Medicaid, the governor has already talked about dipping into education to fund those cuts. Medicare, Medicaid are the biggest expenses in New York State. And the governor, it sounds like, has every intention to fully fund those 2 programs. So every position that we shift to a grant, every position we create to save some money now based on class sizes, or creating rooms like our 2 new special education rooms, bringing district OT/PTs back into district to save us money as well. These are moves that close the budget gaps now, but also will have positive impacts on our financial future as well as we look forward in a very, I would say, tumultuous landscape with our government. So we use the number $140,000 if we absorb a position through retirement in savings. If we don't absorb that position now and the financial picture doesn't improve, of course, this is the last thing we want to do. In 10 years as superintendent, I've never had to do it. But, if there is hopefully not, the time that comes that has to be a layoff, that could be 2 positions based on salary because it's the lowest seniority based position that would have to be put on a Pell list, and we don't want to get to that point. So it's important that we look at now. There's not a lot that we're looking at to absorb, but there are a couple positions that we think we can based on class size.
And to be clear, so everybody hears it loud and clear, we are not there.
No,
We are not
there.
cutting any faculty.
No. This is not the rainy day. I hope we don't ever have the rainy day. But it's definitely on my mind as we move forward.
One other clarification point, Ken, I know you and I have talked about this before, is making very clear what it means to absorb
Yep.
a position.
Yep.
So I hope we can have that conversation at some point.
And then I did change some language in here after I'm reading it through, because I don't want people to think that, we're, those people are going away. I use the word consolidation, and I'll point out where that is. There's 2 absorptions through retirement, but I think we've consolidated some classes at the elementary level in order to shift people around a little bit in order to save jobs and keep our people here. So like I said before, we're looking at a total absorption or a reduction in faculty of 2.2 positions. Those are at the high school, and I'll get into that in a minute. And then we do have a lot of turnover in the teacher aide realm, and obviously we're not going to, anybody who's a teacher aide that's mandated to be here through an IEP or a special ed program. Obviously, we need that aide on board, but we're just going to look hard, and we will not, we will make sure that every student that has a need has that need met. But of the 110 aides in here, we get a lot of turnover every summer of aides. We think we can reduce 5 to 8 teacher aide positions. Again, but anybody who's working in a teacher aide position right now who wants to come back next year will have a job here at Sweet Home.
So these are not retirements. These are
people that leave, find another job.
just don't backfill those.
High level of turnover every year. Yes.
Okay.
So we're going to we'll make sure everybody with a IEP and that's mandated has their aides. Anybody with needs that we talk to the principal about, we'll make sure, but we'll work with our building principals to make sure that all their needs are met. But we still think we can reduce maybe 5 in total in the district.
So if it's like max 8 aide positions and then 2 absorptions, 2.2 absorptions, I don't know how you get a 0.2 person.
I'll explain that. in a
Okay.
minute. Yep.
That's a maximum of 10.2 positions across the district that would not be refilled.
Potentially, yes.
Actually.
Yeah.
Okay.
As of right now.
Dr. Janestri, can you talk about any programs being impacted, any opportunities being impacted for the students?
Yeah, I will get into that, Mr. Rimenol, in a minute. I think, I'll go through school by school and we'll talk about that throughout. So this is where we are class sizes right now. There's a couple of areas that we're looking at, keeping a very close eye on. 3rd grade that's moving into 4th grade at Heritage Heights. It's at 24.3. And there's a couple at Maplemere, the 2nd grade class that we're looking at right now, keeping a close eye on, and a couple at Willow Ridge. The 1st grade class at Willow Ridge is currently at 23.3 students on average. The 5th grade, 22.7. And I'll get into what the recommendations are and what the numbers would be. But most of these, except for I think one section, falls within our recommended class size or the board's class that we've been working with the board throughout my tenure here. And then to Mr. Leibel's point, where we are with full-time educators in the district, we're actually up, since the 1920 year, we had 345 full-time educators in the district. Of course, the district added 54 positions with COVID. And 23-24, we're at 390, 24-25, 393, and we're up to 405 this year. Again, a lot of shifts, additions in special education, teachers, as well as some emotional and social supports. So overall, as a faculty, and our full-time educator number is growing. So some recommendations that we would like to make the board to close the $661,000 gap. We would reduce, our recommendation is to reduce a 1.0 art teacher through attrition at the high school. We have a technology teacher that's duly certified in art education, and that would be able to pick up a couple electives. That teacher right now is not teaching a full course load in technology. So in working with Mr. Lucenti, and I know he's working with the counselors right now, we feel like that tech teacher could pick up a little bit of the load there. We would reduce, our recommendation would be to reduce a 1.0 business position through attrition. There were, in looking at those course numbers, a lot of those courses were under 10 students per elective. And so, and we worked with Mr. Lucenti and the high school administration to explore alternative scheduling, options for courses, offering electives every other year, embedding business coursework in other content areas, et cetera. And I know he met with the counselors today to talk about that. So there's more work that needs to be done there. But those are, again, two recommendations based on class sizes. But we feel like we can, we have a teacher that's duly certified in tech and art that can help in the art department. We do have a 0.2 German teacher, so there's your 0.2, Mrs. Anthon. And then we've been completing a phase out of German here, and that's been going over the past few years. And then working with Mr. Lucenti, there's a 0.4 foreign language position here right now with low class sizes. We want to keep that position though, and transfer that to the middle school because there are larger class sizes at the middle school in foreign language, and that person could help out in there. And I know our foreign language teachers at the middle school have talked to me, have talked to the board about the additional support that's needed, and we would like to make that recommendation. At the middle school, we've gone through course by course, and they're pretty heavy. They're pretty, and we do not feel that there's any positions there that need to be consolidated or absorbed. So we're not recommending any changes to the staff at the middle school. Same thing with Heritage Heights. We also looked at sections at the elementary level where there were five sections or 4 sections for consolidation that would keep our class sizes in a particular range. But Heritage Heights is 3 sections across the board, and did not, and felt like they're right at the number where we want them to be. And we do not feel like Heritage Heights needs an absorption or a reduction or a consolidation at this point, based on their numbers and the number of sections at each grade level.
Mr. Genestri,
Yes.
when you showed the class sizes before,
Yep.
if we're at 24.3 in 3rd grade at Heritage, and our goal is to be at 24 before we start recommending a higher, or K-12, or K-2, we're at 20, and they're at 21 already in K, how are we not looking at potentially adding a section?
Yeah, that's going to be based on what we see happening. Again, who's moving in and who's moving this summer. That very well could happen, Mrs. Battaglia. Right now, based on where we are, we'd like to see that movement before we recommend additional staffing, but those are absolutely class sizes that we're keeping a very close eye on and working with Mr. Perry to make sure if it gets to a certain point that we're going to have to pivot.
Thank you.
At Maple Mirror, we would consolidate a section at the 4th grade, and my apologies. I know when this was posted, it said absorb, but I want to say consolidate here, a section of the 4th grade level, because I don't want there to be an impression that we would be losing a teacher there. We would just be making a shift of that position. So we would consolidate a section of at the 4th grade level, moving that grade level from 5 sections to 4 sections. This would bring it to 24 at the 5th grade level at Maple Mirror. And this person would transfer to an open position created by retirement. Again, I want to reiterate, we'll be monitoring the class sizes with Mr. Ryan over the summer, making sure that we make any adjustments that are necessary. And then all grade levels there will be at 3 or 4 sections next year, eliminating the 5-section bubble. At Willow Ridge, we would consolidate one section at grade 2, moving it from 4 sections to 3 sections. This will shift it from 17 to 22 students at that level. This cohort's operating at 22 students now, and we'll look at the summer registration again to make any necessary adjustments. This will put all grade levels at 3 sections, eliminating a 4-section bubble at Willow Ridge. And then at Glendale, we would consolidate a 5th grade section. Class sizes going from 16 to 21 in that cohort. Consolidate a 1st grade section at Glendale with class sizes going to from 14 to 21 in that section, in that class. Again, monitoring class size numbers over the summer and making necessary adjustments as we move forward. The teachers impacted there would transfer to open positions created through retirement. And then all grade levels from grades 1 through 5 will have 3 sections, eliminating a 4-section bubbles at Glendale. So factors that could impact us as we move forward. Registration transfers throughout the summer, those seem to be picking up. Each summer that goes by, there's more movement that goes on in the district. We're also experiencing that throughout the year. I know I'm talking to the building principals all the time about move-ins and move-outs. But we're monitoring those numbers. Where we are with kindergarten registration, how many of our UPKers, we always get them all, but there are parents that do not send their students to UPK. So we're looking at kindergarten numbers as well. Where we are with the New York State budget, when that finally gets approved, hopefully we do get that 2%, which we expect. And then, federal funding, there were a lot of fluctuations or news that we were getting money, we're not getting money. We're confident that the money is there for us this year. We're not so confident about it next year as we move forward. But the Department of Education being dismantled in Washington is not helping in this regard.
Dr. Nestri, if I just might, just for the good of the board, we did back in February, we kind of outlined what we do in terms of federal funding, both from a title grant process as well as the 611, 619 IDEA grants that are relative to special education. We do have, just for the good of the board again, about $1.75 million in those grants in salaries and people. So obviously, if there is a significant shift in some sort of federal funding, it could have a very significant impact on what we do. We did talk about that back in February. To Dr. Ginestri's point, all indications are that going forward for the 26-27 school year, that the funding would remain in place. Beyond that is honestly anybody's guess from that end of things. So I just want to be mindful about not only next year, but the future going forward, because those grant funds are nice to be able to add those services and separate from the general fund. But those would have to be considerations that we would have to certainly talk about if the federal funding were ever to either be significantly reduced or eliminated from that end of things.
I remember I asked you about that, and it equated to being 24 positions that were impacted by that. I think 14 or 24, maybe I'm wrong, I don't know, but I felt like that's.
Yeah, I don't remember I'm just
folks.
looking back at our presentation. I can get those numbers of people for you, but it is $1.72 million that is tied up in salary for those title grants as well as the IDEA grants.
Yeah, and I think, Sweet Home is not alone in this boat. I think, my March superintendent meeting at Erie One was probably one of the most anxiety-ridden meetings as a lot of our Erie One districts are looking to close budget gaps, including a big one with our neighbor. And it's creating a lot of anxiety amongst us at the district office levels. What's going to happen in the future? There's just so many question marks. So, obviously we're going to keep monitoring it and keep an eye on it. But with over half the districts in New York State only getting a 1% bump because they're safe, harmless. It is certainly creating a lot of anxiety around the state. So one of the proposals that we talked about was summer school. We wanted to look in reducing summer school by about half, from 600,000 to 300,000. So our proposal would be to offer reduced enrichment for middle school, about a 3-week program, 4 days a week, 3 hours each. Each core, 6 through 8, would have coursework, and as well as Spanish. We would offer reduced exam prep for high school, 1 to 2 weeks, based on where our students are at, in a differentiated fashion based on individual student results on a particular Regents exam. If there's a greater need, we put that student in the 2-week program. It would not impact our ESY program whatsoever. So we're fully funding our ESY extended school program. Graduating seniors would attend a credit exam recovery program at BOCES that meets state regulations for credit recovery, and we would get aid back on that program. There's approximately 10 students a year that are impacted by that, and then we work to get them to the August graduation point. We would eliminate the elementary intervention general education summer program as well through there. Below, we've had multiple admins work summer school. We could use one to both now support the middle school and the high school and secondary ESY, all located at the high school instead of in multiple buildings. And altogether, it's 5 weeks in the summer with no overlap of middle school and high school. So teachers can teach. Anybody that wants to apply can teach the middle school and the high school sections July 13th through the 19th. And there's a schedule below of what we would propose for summer school. I think the big piece of it for us would be exam prep for our high school students that have failed a Regents exam.
How long was summer school previously?
6 weeks. 6 weeks? 6 weeks. So in summary, like I said, with the shifts and everything that we talked about, and the addition of 2 special education teachers, psychologists, speech therapists, the shifts of the elementary rooms, we're talking about a reduction of 2.2 positions. Specifics on transfers and shifts are to be determined due to contractual obligations. So those are yet to be determined. And those will start to happen once the budget, the board votes on the budget. And we'll be settling our buildings in the coming weeks.
We'll open it up for questions here in a minute, but this is just kind of to wrap things up. This gives you, based upon the work that we've done from the operational side to Dr. Ginestri's recommendations for the staffing piece of it, it does get us to a balanced budget. So our balanced budget is $108,608,147, which is a budget-to-budget increase of 2.87%. The local tax levy to support that budget is $56,283,605, or 3.3%. It's important to note that of that tax levy, that increase in the tax levy, 1.6-ish million of that is earmarked for bus purchases. Bus purchases are an exemption to the tax cap, which allows us to add dollar for dollar the cost of a bus to the tax levy. The question, because I've been asked that question, can't we just take that $1.6 million and not buy buses and put it somewhere else? You could certainly do that, but it would then no longer be a tax cap exemption, and it would require us to override the tax cap, which means that we would need a supermajority for a budget approval. So rather than a single one more yes vote than a no vote, we would need to get 60% yes versus 40% no. So a large chunk of that tax levy, again, is earmarked for school bus purchases, both electric through some grant funding that we have, as well as diesel bus purchases. And again, remember when we met I think it was in March, because of the legislation and the mandate from New York State, beyond next year, we are no longer allowed to buy any diesel buses. It must be alternative fuel or electric buses going forward. So we felt as though, based upon the number of buses that we had to turn over, again, we have 68 buses that we need to turn over in our fleet. We will have turned over 11 by doing more diesel buses now. It buys us a little bit more time for those buses to be able to be on the road. So a good portion of that tax levy is supporting the bus purchase. So in the end, we do have a balanced budget at 108,608,147. Again, it's a 2.87% increase. And Mike, if you just hit the next slide. This is, we did this for you last time around. This gives you a sense for the taxpayers and our community, our school community out there, to give you a sense as to what that means in terms of tax bills for our residents. So I caution when we do this slide, again, we are using assessment values for the current year to estimate next year's tax bill. We won't have assessment levels from each of the towns until August when we set our tax rates, but this is our best guess as to where we sit right now. So we use assessment levels and values for the current year to estimate next year. We maintain the equalization rate of 99% in the town of Amherst versus 21% in the town of Tonawanda. Those will likely change for next year. And we do present these rates based upon going right to the tax cap limit, that 3.3% tax cap, $56,283,605. So we estimate a tax bill on an average home, which is an assessed value of $250,000 in our district, that on the Amherst side, we would see a tax rate per thousand of $10.01, which would translate to a tax bill of $2,477, which then would estimate an increase year over year of $79. And then on the Tonawanda side, similar home assessed value of $250,000 would translate to a tax rate of $47.30 per thousand. Translates to a tax bill of $2,483, also a year over year increase of $79.
And just wrapping up, I think when we started this process back in January and we got the original numbers, you see a $1 million budget deficit and it puts a pit in your stomach, obviously. But then you get your healthcare number in late March and utility costs continue to go up and and then that deficit grows to $2 million. And I just want to thank again our administrators who put in a lot of hard work and effort to try and get us to a balanced budget with minimal impact on programming. With that said, I'll just open up to any other questions from the board.
I guess I'll ask this question. I think I ask it every year, but I'll ask it anyways. In August, when you get the assessment, the real assessment, does that mean that money will be spread over if it's a larger assessed valuation? So the increase may be reduced?
Correct,
Okay,
yes.
thank you.
Mr. Ravenel, that's likely. I mean, obviously, I would think that assessed values would rise. You've seen the real estate market, that if those assessed values do rise, I would anticipate that year over year increase would be less than what we're estimating right now.
Thank you.
I have a question. I was just waiting to see if anybody else had one first. So I'm really sorry for what I'm about to ask here, but I promised I would ask the questions that were given to me, right, this week. There are people who are asking the question, if we just didn't buy the buses, we wouldn't have to do anything. We wouldn't have to give anything up. We wouldn't have to shift anything around. So I think about what is it that we're actually giving up? Okay, what needs to be moved around? So obviously we've got some shifts in personnel. which is not comfortable for people.
Yep.
We have 2.2 positions, potentially 10.2 if we consider the aides in there that will not be backfilled, refilled, call it whatever you want. We have the elimination of elementary summer school, which I know for some parents is in their mind catastrophic for the learning needs of their children. Now, this is not to be confused with ESY. ESY is specifically summer continuation of services for students that have IEP, special needs, stuff like that. That's not being touched. We're talking about other students that have learning needs where that service is offered over the summer. So I guess it's like 4 things really that are having to get moved because of this. So now we had this conversation before, Don and I did, when I asked, what do we do? We don't have a crystal ball. We don't know what's going to happen with all of the green energy stuff. And we don't know if that deadline is going to get extended for being able to purchase these buses for school districts. We have no way of knowing if the money that we're spending today is going to be, I don't even have a word for it, if that deadline gets extended. There's literally no way that we would know that. So it's kind of like a gamble, right? We're doing what is the responsible thing, and we're getting the buses at a time where we can utilize that funding for them. So when I heard you talk about if we didn't have the buses put in the budget, then the tax cap situation, and then we have to have a supermajority vote. For those that don't understand what that means, can you explain what that means?
Sure. So let me just address the bus thing, the bus piece of it first. So we are purchasing or recommending that we purchase 4 electric buses. And as I said in my presentation, those 4 electric buses net cost to the district are around $164,000. We worked very hard to get grant funding, not only from New York State, but from the federal government that has been guaranteed, because that funding, aside from our funding class, has been taken away. That funding is no longer available.
Right.
So we essentially are getting, for every electric bus that we get, we are getting $300,000 in grant funding.
Right.
So that bus, if we wanted to buy it outright, as opposed to what we're paying now, $164,000, would be close to $465,000. So we're taking advantage of grant funding that is available to us, that we are not certain that it's going to be there in the future. We are working towards a mandate that we believe will stay in place. It may be extended, but the kind of the MO of our office, with the blessings of the board, has been able to try and take advantage of as many funding opportunities as we can to help kind of offset some of those costs that would otherwise be passed on to our community.
Right.
So that's one piece of it. The second piece of it is, as I mentioned earlier, the mandate is such that beyond next year, we cannot purchase any diesel buses any longer. In order to maintain our fleet in good working order, Mr. Kennedy, our transportation supervisor, as well as our central office staff, we had conversations about it. We feel as though that this is the best plan to give us a prolonged kind of window opportunity to be able to use those buses. Now, that being said, that total of all the buses, that total figure is about $1.6 million. If those were to be taken away and pulled out, that $1.6 million is no longer an exemption to the tax cap. If you wanted to use it in the general fund for expenses other than buses, that would be, again, no longer an exception to the tax cap, which means that the tax levy that you would want to raise in order to support that budget would require on March 19th a passage rate of 60% to 40%. When we had conversations in meetings earlier, my sense was, and the message that I took back from the board, was that there was not an appetite from the board to go above that tax cap. The district has never gone above the tax cap before. We've always been either at that cap or below it. We've gone out years where, we've had minimal to no increases during the times of COVID when federal funding was at its highest. So in short, if the board was If that was something that we wanted to entertain, that $1.6 million for anything other than bus expenses, no longer an exception to the tax cap and would require a supermajority to pass on May 19th.
Thank you for explaining that because I know that there's a large population of folks that don't necessarily understand
Sure,
how that
no,
works. And they're
absolutely.
looking at us saying, just get rid of the buses. Why don't you just get rid of, and it's literally not that easy. So thank you for
Sure.
explaining.
I would caution anybody that's concerned about buying new buses. If we don't buy the buses and then our buses that we have, the aging buses that we have break down, now we can't get the kids to school. So I would caution that's a very slippery area in taking that out completely because we do have an aging fleet that we try to keep up to date.
So for the, so for the part, like with, I know you mentioned like getting rid of the summer school program for elementary schools and then like reducing like the summer school length for high school, like, would you guys be able to go back to like offering it? Like if you realize like students
Funding comes back.
are, I'm sorry?
If the funding comes back, that would be one area that we would look to, we could enhance summer school for sure. We're going to look at needs based on passage rates of Regents exams. And I think we'll fund it for any student that wants to attend to come to get that work to help them with their Regents exam.
Right.
Yes.
I was just wondering, cause like, I feel like reducing like amount of times or even offering summer school like that could affect students who need the extra help.
Yep. We do not want them to fall behind. And so that's why we're proposing an intensive, program to help them pass that exam prep.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Janestri. Next on the agenda is our upcoming events. We have a bunch of PTO, PTSA, PTA meetings coming up in the next few weeks. Willow Ridge Skating Party, Glendale has a multicultural night, the middle school Scholastic Book Fair, Maple Mirror Scholastic Book Fair and art show coming up, STEM night at Heritage, and middle school spring activity night. This leads us to open session number 1, as per board policy 1512. This open session is for topics related to tonight's agenda. Excuse me. Sorry. You will have 3 minutes to speak. We do have one sign up already, Ms. Hopsha. So if you would like to take your turn.
All right, I will be reading. I have had the privilege of teaching at Glendale for 33 years. For 15 of those years, I sat on a school board in a small rural district. 12 of those years, I was president and had to make the difficult decisions you are having to make with this budget. I am compensated very well, and thankfully you will be able to realize that savings next year when I retire. But this year, I need to speak on behalf of my profession and support my young friends as they attempt to establish, hopefully, a lifelong career at Sweet Home. Education is not a top-down approach to business. The business is kids, and a strong school district must work from the ground up. The most important question a board member should ask is, what do the students need to be successful? I challenge every administrator to get their hands dirty, earn your salaries, come into our world and see what it takes to keep 20 moving, active, scarred or traumatized youth with varying individualized needs focused and interested in learning something new. It takes a village to teach in a building, and we are the village. Your absence is noted and noticed. During my time on the school board in a small school district supported mostly by only its community, our focus had to be a needs versus wants approach. We didn't have big businesses to fortify our budget. Sweet Home is blessed with endless business support, so there is clearly more room for luxury. I have personally made cuts to supplies, textbooks, field trips, staff allowances, staffing, intervention programs, paraprofessionals, coaching, sports programs, teachers, and administrative positions that weren't directly related to student achievement. Ask yourselves how many of our employees are hidden away doing random tasks because their own personal lives got in the way of their profession. Are those positions necessary for student success? Will the top officials be taking in their annual salary bump or paid incentives? In rural communities, those top officials have been known to take 0 increases during the difficult years with no paid incentives. I understand that cuts are necessary, but didn't we just pass a large building project? Who will be the people that that project benefits? Without people who work directly with children, there will be no ability to support the enrollment expansion that continuously happens here because of the endless housing opportunities available in the area. You can't have a school without teachers. It simply isn't possible. Even as AI takes over the classroom, someone has to be there to manage behaviors, boo-boos, academic requirements, counseling, the technology that's bound to go awry. Speaking of technology, could we rethink the need of one-to-one devices for all students? I am certain grades K to 2 don't need their own device. Speaking for myself, I can teach with or without them. Sweet Home has a challenging student population. It is the people on the front lines that do the most for them in all facets of their learning world. Please consider looking more closely at the luxuries Sweet Home affords and make your future decisions based on the needs of children. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hopkins. Is there anyone else who would like to speak?
I will also be reading. Hi there, my name is Michelle Christensen. I've been a primary teacher in this district for 26 years. I've taught both first and second grade at Willow Ridge. And I'm here to speak about the impact that increasing class sizes has, particularly in K1 and 2. At this age, students are building foundations for everything that follows. In kindergarten especially, the students are learning what school is all about. For many, they have never spent their day with a large group of children and need to follow the routine of a day. They cannot just get up and walk around when they want. Eating is only during lunch and snack time, and they have to do things that they don't like or is difficult for them. They also need patience. They are not the only student or child looking for attention or help. In a primary classroom, they are learning how to read, write, how to think mathematically. Socially, they need to learn how to interact with their peers positively, follow routines, and regulate their emotions, as well as these foundational skills of holding a pencil correctly, forming the letters top down, using scissors to cut, twisting off a top, tying their shoes, or even zipping up their own coat, which you'd be surprised how many can't do. These are not skills that develop passively. They require consistent and individualized attention. When class sizes in primary grades reach between 22 and 24 students, it becomes significantly more difficult to provide a level of support. There are simply fewer minutes in the day for each child. Just as when you bring a second baby home, you love it just as much as the first, but you do not have the same amount of time for your first child that you once had. We love each and every one of our students, or we would not come back year after year. And it really weighs on us when we cannot give each child the attention that they deserve. Struggling students may go unnoticed longer, and those who are ready to be challenged may not get the opportunity to grow as much as they could. And the kids who are at grade level stay at grade level instead of getting pushed. I also want to address the concern in the information presented in the budget. It states that the district will monitor class sizes over the summer and that K2 classrooms exceeding 20 students would result in a request for additional teachers. However, we have cohorts in Willow Ridge that have exceeded 20 students in both kindergarten and first grade. At present, kindergarten classrooms at Willow Ridge stand at 20, 20, and 22, and the first grade classrooms are at 24, 24, and 23, and we have asked for additional sections. At the same time, The presentation indicates that Willow Ridge will lose a section. This feels contradictory. If we already know that the class sizes are above the stated threshold, it raises the question of why would we move forward with reductions that will only increase these numbers further. Literacy development is especially impacted. In K through 2, students need time to practice their foundational skills, work in small groups, and receive immediate feedback. These are the years where strong readers are made, and we simply do not have enough hours in the day to reach each child. If students fall behind here, catching them up later becomes much more difficult and much more costly. Also, when it comes to assessing, the amount of time it takes to do this one-on-one takes up so much more of our teaching time. We are seeing increased social and emotional needs in our youngest learners. Larger class sizes means more noise, more distractions, less space on the carpet and at their spot, as well as far fewer opportunities to build the strong relationships that help the students feel safe, supported, and ready to learn. This is also an equity issue. Students who need the most support, those who are struggling academically, who receive services, or who are learning the English language, are the ones most often affected when the class size increases. I understand that difficult budget decisions must be made, but it's important to recognize that increasing class sizes in our earliest grades comes with real consequences. These are the years while their foundation is built, and if that foundation is weakened, the effects are felt for years to come. I urge you to carefully consider the long-term impact on student learning as these decisions are made. Please think about their little faces and what they are missing out on, because as teachers, we do this every night as we lay our head on the pillows. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else like to speak? We'll go here first and then Josh. The only thing I will say, I do not want to cut anybody off, so we are letting you go a little over 3 minutes, but please be courteous to the people that want to come after you, because we do have a 30-minute time limit scheduled for this. So I will not cut anybody off if you're gonna go over, but you get into the 4.5, 5-minute range, we're gonna have to stop you. Sorry.
That's okay. I do not have a full-out speech. I just have, I'm Kendra Chesky. I am the social worker at Glendale. I adore my job. I talk about it with anybody that will listen. So I was just curious on some of the inconsistencies that have been presented. In presenting for the capital project, there were multiple presentations that had listed that by 2029, there would be another 560 kids in our elementary schools alone. That was on multiple slides across many different conversations. So it is going to continue to increase, or at least we had all agreed that it was going to continue to increase while we were getting the votes for the capital project. The other thing that is standing out to me a lot is that since the consolidation was based off of class sizes, and then the very next thing that is stated is that if class sizes in K-2 begin to exceed 20 students, and then the plan for, like, let's say Glendale specifically, the plan is already starting out at 21. So if we're thinking about urging the board to add another faculty member once it starts getting over 20, we're already doing that, and that's the plan for next year. There are so many needs across all of our buildings, and it is just overwhelming to think about these things continuing to rise. If we kept the numbers from this presentation about the projections for 2029, they have Glendale projected at 549 students. So if we have 3 sections in each grade, that would be like a 30-child classroom. And we know we're heading that way. So that's just kind of the confusion that I have had with this, is we're planning for something that we said we would add another staff member for if we got to that point. I also receive all of our registration for Glendale in the summer, and dozens and dozens and dozens come in every single year at the end of August and the beginning of September. It's just data that we have and data we should use.
Yeah.
Hi. Jessica Stevens. I'm a parent in the district. Okay, this is kind of short tonight. I believe most people here have already addressed this. I'm sure you've received a lot of emails and you will get more, but I'm just going to echo the sentiments. We have teachers retiring and those positions aren't being filled. Our 10 aide positions are also not being filled. I'm worried about the IEPs of those students in those classrooms, bigger classrooms, less teachers in there. As class sizes are getting larger and aides are being cut, there's less offerings are available to the students. This will affect grades and graduation rates. It will lead to early retirements and losing our most valued teachers. And when these cuts happen, why is it always art and music that always seem to be on the chopping block? I know that that particular part was only proposed if needed, but again, it's always art and music that seems to be disposable. We used to offer more college level classes and opportunities for high school students, and those have already been cut. Every year we're cutting more. We have one job, educating our children, yet somehow all the means to do so, one by one, are disappearing. And if elementary classes do increase, like Mrs. Pataglia kind of brought to our attention, because some are already at capacity, I want to know what we're going to be taking away, where that's going to come from. You know, I mean, because that's not in the budget, right? That hasn't been, is that when the art class will be, is that when those proposals will start happening? I mean, I guess more rhetorical since you don't really respond, and I understand that. And then with summer school being proposed to be cut, I'm just curious, and maybe I don't understand this fully, but is that going to negatively affect the education of the students who need that summer school? I mean, unless you can confidently say yes, I don't think that should be taken away. And I think that's all I have for now. The rest I'll do during the open session because it's not about the agenda. Thank you.
Anybody else like to speak during the first session? Okay, that leads us to our new business. We will be voting on this new business next week. We have A, our budget adoption. B, our special education class placements and preschool placements. C is our monthly financial reports. D is our bids for office supplies and athletic uniforms. E is our annual district vote for our chief election inspector and inspectors of the election. F is for our Erie One BOCES budget. And for our Erie One BOCES Board of Education members. G is for disposal of obsolete property, which is a swing machine, some math workbooks that do no longer conform with our curriculum, and a couple of buses. H is a resolution of the Board of Education of Sweet Home Central School District declaring the district's proposed capital outlay project. That is for our seeker. And authorizing and directing the inclusion of funding for such projects. I is our BOCES Dexter Terrace Sweet Home contract. J is the capital improvement project phase 1, their geotechnical reports. And K is our capital improvement project phase 1 surveying. Does anybody have any questions, comments on any of the agenda items A through K? Seeing none, we will move on to our second open session. Would anyone like to address the board? Remember, you do have 3 minutes. Please state your name, address, and relationship to Sweet Home. Floor is yours.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
I want to talk about bullying. My daughter and her friends deal with bullying on a daily basis, and nothing is ever done to properly address the problem. In this particular case, it is always one specific child, and there are never any consequences that deter this behavior, so this one child continues their behavior. And while this is a personal story, this is an example of what is happening throughout the schools, as I'm sure everybody's actually aware of. So yesterday, this child accused another child of having a gun in her backpack. The teacher heard this, it was reported, she was escorted by the assistant principal to the office and was seated directly next to the bullying child to deal with this and talk about this. So she was embarrassed, scared she would be in trouble, and then she was sat directly next to her bully to talk about it and made her write an incident report. She tried to go back to school, to her school day, but by then all the other kids were already asking questions, pointing and picking on her. She went back to the counselor, and when she asked to call her mom for some comfort, it was brushed off and she was denied that. She was so upset that she actually refused to come to school today. I know that this bully is currently in, what do you call it? Help me out here. In school, or suspension, sorry. I'm not good with words today. But when that's over with, we all know that bully is just gonna go right back to the same behavior and nothing ever changes. And this affects the teachers in the classroom too. They're trying to teach to these students, and there's always the same handful of students that's constantly disrupting classes. I don't know what the answer is, but we need to come together and figure out what that answer is, because it's not working. So my child and some of her friends identify as LGBTQ. She and her friends have family members who also identify as LGBTQ, including parents. She and her friends are constantly bullied by other kids for this. The LGBTQ students are told on a regular basis by other kids that they will go to hell. Other students will throw things at them and tell them exactly why, which often includes homophobic slurs. When this is overheard or reported, it's never taken seriously. I've spoken to other parents and they agree that this is an everyday occurrence, and as such, it's treated like that's just how kids are. One of my older daughter's friends even confided in me that another student, female, forcefully kissed him on the bus. When he confided in his counselor, the counselor laughed it off. He also confided in me that many of his teachers and some of the admin refused to use his preferred pronouns. I'm sorry, but this behavior is not okay. By allowing it to continue with no consequences, you are giving the message that it is okay to harass LGBTQ students. If these children were being picked on for any other identifying factor, I believe this would be better handled than it currently is. I want to see actual consequences for once, and I really want the homophobic atmosphere to be properly addressed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers? Thank you, everybody. Moving on to personnel, we'll be voting on personnel appointments next week. We do have teaching and administrative, building leadership team appointments, regular appointments, substitute appointments, and interscholastic activity appointments. For service, we have retirements, discontinuance of service, a termination, and other regular appointments. Appointments, both regular and permanent civil service, and a few leave of absences. Are there any questions on personnel? Does anyone else have any other comments, questions, concerns that we didn't address? Okay, that is the end of our meeting. So may I have a motion and a second to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. All in favor?